Welcome to 5 Minutes with Andy. Once a month, Virtual Inc.'s CEO, Andy Freed, will be offering you tips, tricks, and insights into leadership, management, and business skills. In this episode, Andy welcomes Mauro Lance, Virtual Inc.'s Chief Financial Officer, and Mike McCammon, a Senior Consultant with Virtual Inc. This podcast discusses all things standards, from why they matter, what works well, and how groups have evolved. To tell you more, here's Andy Freed.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to 5 Minutes with Andy. Today, we're talking about standards, and we're going to talk about it with two folks that really know their stuff on this. Mike McCammon, how you doing, Mike?
Great, Andy. How are you?
Thanks for joining, and Mauro Lance. Thank you both.
Hi, Andy. Thank you for
Mauro,
coming.
thanks for being here. So, we're coming up on World Standards Week, and I know that I registered at Crate and Barrel for something, and I'm really excited for the big World Standards celebration, but. Standards. I mean, come on. Why should I be excited about them? Why do standards really matter? Either one of you want to leap into that one?
Sure, I'll jump in first. I was thinking about this earlier today, and basically everything that exists in the technology industry that is ubiquitous is built on standards. You think of mobile phones, you think of the network that they work on, you think of the internet, you think of browsers, you think of all of these systems. Really, they've all been enabled and become ubiquitous because of standards.
Now, Mauro, is it just technology, or standards play in other spaces as well?
Oh, anything. I mean, really, if you look around, whenever you see something that can be used, across the US, across different continents, chances are there are standards built behind. So you think about television, radio, the web. I mean, really everything that we do is based on standards because they got agreement. Let's do this way so it can be used anywhere, and that way you can increase competition and all of that. So it's really ubiquitous all over our lives.
Got it. So how about the organizations that create these? I know that at Virtual we work with a bunch of different standards organizations. What do you find works well and not so well for standards organizations, Mike?
Well, I think, the most important thing is that for companies to acknowledge the fact that they can't always do these, kind of lift the world on their own. There's a cultural element, I think, that is really where groups are successful. If one company thinks that by themselves they can kind of make something happen, it's usually not always a successful recipe. But when organizations come to the table humble to realize that it's going to take a lot of collaboration and compromise, I think that's where you have the greatest opportunity for success.
And Mauro, how do you find that these groups evolve over time? I know that you've been involved with some groups that started out doing one thing and have morphed. How does that happen?
I mean, it's really like a startup if you think about it. I mean, there is a original idea where a few actors get together, usually companies and organizations, and they evolve. They are trying to solve one piece of the technology. They get together, they realize, agree on a standard, then release it, and then realize they have to maintain it. And then they say, for this to work better, we should also do with this other thing here. And they realize very quickly that they are so important for competition all over the world that they start very little and they start growing, and they go through the same phases as a company, startup, maturity, and then all of that.
So I'm curious, Mike, are there any places and areas where there aren't standards where you think that standards would have helped?
Well, one that would come immediately to mind would be power. And by the way, I think everyone would say there are lots of standards, but the problem is not just one. So anyone that's traveled outside of the United States, you can have that experience of things not working properly. There's plug adapters. I mean, there's all kinds of problems, and the industry is kind of trying to work on that with wireless charging. Also, micro USB has been pretty popular. USB's been pretty popular too, to kind of bridge some of those gaps. But generally speaking, power has been one place that we should probably apply more effort.
Got it. Yeah, that's helpful to know. Mauro, what do you see the future holding for standards and standards bodies? Is this work that continues, or is this work that at some point, does the need for standards bodies end?
No, I think that quite the opposite. We are in a point in time in which collaboration is more needed than ever, and it's very well, proven that standards organization are very quick to bring all the different actors to the table and start discussing and figure out how to, unleash the potential of, technology or whatever it is that they are standardizing. So no, I think the future is very bright now with all, especially with the push from COVID. Everything is so remote and all technologies are like getting better to be able to collaborate remotely. So I think the future is very bright for standards organizations.
Excellent.
One thing I do want to kind of just real quickly add in is I'm a little bit more nervous than you, Mauro and Andy, because I do think that today's technologists kind of look at the successful big companies and think that they can do it on their own. And I think that's kind of a misguided kind of perception of the world that, really the reason why companies like Facebook or Amazon have been successful or Google have been because of standards, not because of themselves alone. And I think sometimes younger people don't always see that. And I think it's a very important feature to look at if you don't have a lot of experience in the industry to see that.
Got it. No, that's helpful. And last question to you. So Mike, how are you celebrating World Standards Week?
I am having my dog groomed today. I think that's probably the big news today.
Okay, excellent. Well, hopefully that's done. Is your dog a standard poodle? Because that would really be the.
No, actually, it's not a standard poodle. It's a Chinese crested, which apparently is a very abnormal or is a very unique dog, a unique breed.
All right. So, sometimes standards don't apply for the canine world, apparently. Well, Mike and Mauro, thank you so much for joining me today in 5 minutes with Andy. Great to talk to both of you and get a better understanding of the world of standards and how it's changing and how so much is built upon it. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andy.